Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I obviously look incredibly different. I walk into a building full of people. I'm the one person that's looked at for a lot longer than the other people. And, 17 years after this all happened, I'm used to that. And I'll tell you right now that I'm more comfortable with the way I look today than the way I looked 18 years ago before I got injured. I got no one to compete with anymore. Like in this world that we live in our normal selves, we compete with everybody all the time on everything. And I'm not competing against anybody anymore. And it feels amazing when you free yourself from that. So I'm extremely comfortable with who I am. And I mean, my hands, like, obviously extremely different. Like things that I didn't struggle with before, I obviously struggle with now, 18 years later. But still, I'm more comfortable today with who I am than I was 18 years ago. So, yeah, let's get into the story of what happened. So, 17 years ago, September 1st, 2006, when I was deployed in Iraq, I was actually 9 months into a deployment in Iraq. And I was on a patrol on a road I had been on many times before in a vehicle called a Bradley, basically a small tank. That day was different than most other days because this day there was an IED that was buried under the road. And my Bradley ran over it and it exploded. Went through the bottom of my vehicle up into the turret where I was sitting, but also that's where we have our fuel tank. And yeah, it's about 168 gallons of fuel that we have, and we fill up every single time we went out on a mission. So it was a full tank of fuel, covering myself, covering my buddies, covering the vehicle in fuel, and instantly on fire. As soon as I was on fire, the first thing I knew to do was to get out of the vehicle. I had to get out before I could think of anything else. I can't think of stop, drop, and roll yet. I got to think of what's happening in that moment. First thing, get out of the vehicle. So I climbed to the top, and I had the hatch above me open that day. I don't leave that hatch open ever. It's because we're not supposed to. Like when we climb in, we close the hatch so that if we ever got hit with chemicals, chemicals couldn't get into the vehicle. But that day, I left it open. I mean, I just think about that and how lucky and how truly blessed I am. Thank God I left that hatch open. Because if I didn't, with all that smoke and all that fire, the chaos of that moment, like, I wouldn't have found the lever above my head to hit to unlock the cover. So I didn't have to worry about that because I left it open. I climbed through the top. Then once I got to the top, the next thing I knew I had to do was I had to get to the ground. But there were two big problems with that. First of all, it was 10 feet off of the ground. So I was going to have to jump 10 feet to the ground. Big problem. Bigger problem, I couldn't see. And I couldn't see because my face was on fire. I mean, that's why I look so incredibly handsome today, is because my face was on fire. But my face was on fire. Fire was covering my eyes. And I knew I had to jump. Didn't matter that I was blind in that moment. So I did jump. And I did make it to the ground. I took that leap of faith. I did make it to the ground. I broke my leg when I landed, though. And that's actually how I ended up with an amputation of my leg below my knee, my right leg. So I'm out of the vehicle. I'm off of the vehicle. Now I got to put the fire out. And I did what I was taught to do when I was 4 or 5 years old. Stop, drop, and roll. I mean, we all know that one. That's what I did. And that's when I found out that I'm sure it works if your shirt is on fire or something like that, but not when your entire body is engulfed in flames. I could not put the fire out. And that's when I did something that I regret. It's honestly the biggest regret of my entire life because that's when I just gave up. Laid on my back, stared up into the sky, and just accepted that God was going to take me, that it was over. It was done. Stop, drop, and roll didn't work. That's what I was taught to do. I couldn't stand up and run. My leg was broken. Even if I could, where was I going? My face was on fire. I couldn't see anything. So I probably had 10 more seconds to live. And I was like, this is it. It's over. And biggest regret of my life. Because I know today, I don't care how hard things get in my life, I will fight to the very end. There will never be no give up in me ever again. But that day I did. I lost something really important that day. It's something we all carry with us every day of our lives, and that's hope. I gave up hope. Truly, I felt hopeless. And to me today, hope stands for hold on, possibilities exist. Hold on, possibilities exist. And, when you're first dealing with really difficult, really awful things, it's hard to see all the possibilities that exist, later on down the road, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. But if you hold on, which also equals being patient. If you hold on long enough, you're going to find out that there are amazing possibilities that exist for your future. Now, that's what I gave up that day. I was giving up on those possibilities that existed. But thankfully, when I had given up, it was only for a few seconds. And I ended up rolling in one direction. No idea which direction that was in, because I could have been rolling right back to that Bradley. I had no idea which direction I was going. But I was thankfully rolling away from it. And I ended up rolling down a hill and into a canal that was there. And I still think about that day, whenever I struggle with my faith. I can go right back to that moment right there, because I told you that I gave up. I lost hope. I didn't get hope back all of a sudden and roll. I believe that God pushed me into that canal to give me that hope. Like, he was the hope that gave me the opportunity to roll into that canal and save my life, put the fire out that watered it. Eventually, a couple of my friends found me in the canal, and one of them grabbed my legs, and that was one of the first times that I felt true pain, because my leg was broken. And then my other buddy grabbed my arms. Actually, I can remember he grabbed my eye bass first, my body armor. And as soon as he grabbed that, because of the fire, it just ripped right through. So he grabbed under my arms, and then they carried me out of the canal, where the helicopters would pick us up about 30 minutes later. But when I got to the top, that's when it all started to sink in. Like, I could see how bad my injuries were, and this is a tough one for people to hear, I know, but it's just it's my reality. I saw how bad my hands were burned, and that's because my palms were hanging off my fingertips. Something called degloving. Yeah, it was hard for me to see that. And I could see how bad my face was burnt, and it's not because I had a mirror. It's because it was hanging from my chin. Like, in that moment, first of all, I didn't know if I would live. I knew that my injuries were bad enough I might not. But if I did, man, life was going to be different. Like, everything was about to change for me.